Hey, it's Carly.
Hey, it's Shamina.
And
Oh, this is Devyn.
we are
Emotionful.
Clearly you can see we have a guest today. So I guess we'll jump right in.
Well, we're keeping with the theme of like ending chapters for the final season. So we will talk with Devyn about a series or particular chapter that has ended, like how she felt about it. Are you guys ready to get emotionally full?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you, Devyn?
I'm so ready. I love emotions.
So before Devyn introduces herself, I'm just gonna introduce her as my cousin. And then I'll let her do the rest of the introduction. But Devyn, my cousin, please come forward.
Yes, it's me. It's me. I'm Carly's cousin, and I'm a part of a movement called Lovers Authentic and Postpirations, both movements of trying to create more lovers in the world. And I'm here excited to share about our topic today. So
Devyn is in Houston, Texas.
I am in Houston. Mm-hmm.
But she is a world traveler.
United States. We're starting with
national traveler. How about that?
Yes.
National traveler.
Yes, all in on the budget, baby. But yes.
So go ahead. Tell us.
I was gonna say lived in Tampa, and then that's where my heart still belongs. But in Houston for now, and actually in September going to California for a couple months. So pretty excited about that. So
nice.
She leaves her heart wherever she goes.
I do.
So I feel like we've talked about it. You could talk about so many things. And like Shamina had said, this whole theme of our last season is talking about, like that bittersweet feeling of ending a chapter. What does that feel like? But also knowing that a new one ends. And obviously you just said you're leaving Houston in September so why don't we start there?
Mm-hmm. So I actually did go through a lot of big changes in May, and just kind of feeling like I wasn't getting ahead, and that being creative is so important to me. So I think wherever you feel like makes you happy, you kind of have to go down that road, even if it's the hard thing to do. I think that's like been a theme this season of just making sure like, okay, are you doing the hard thing or are you doing like the comfortable thing? And so I really had to ask myself a lot of questions about just making sure I'm genuinely doing the hard thing. And leaving Houston, I love everybody. I've created a whole community here, and so many networks. And Houston is ugly. They get so mad when I say that, but it's so ugly. But the people here are they're just beautiful people. So it's scary to leave here, but California, I mean, come on. It's so pretty. So I'm so excited to go, but I'm also, it's like you said, it's that bittersweet feeling, right? Where it's, you're leaving one thing, but if you didn't go and chase those other things, I would have never met the people here in Houston if I never left Tampa. And Tampa, I have you guys, and my heart has longed for Tampa for a long time, but Houston, I have some of my great memories. Like the greatest memories I've had is because I just said yes and went for it. So yeah.
I think it's crazy because I'll still talk about this like with our mutual friends, how many years you've been gone, because I feel like it was like just yesterday that you were like selling your car and getting ready to go to Houston. And now I'm like, what's it been, like 5 years or something?
Yeah, it's been 5 years. So it's just as long as I lived in Tampa. I live in Houston now. And it's crazy because before that was South Florida. And so when I try to explain people, when I get to meet, like when I'm dating and I'm just like, so where are you from? That question always stumps me. I'm just like, I don't know. My heart belongs everywhere.
What part of my life do you want to know where I'm from?
Exactly. So But yeah, so I always envy Carly because I'm just like, oh my gosh, how lucky is she? Her parents have lived in the same house. And, I was I was in a very dark place about a month ago. And Carly actually called me and I went to tell her, I'm like, yeah, so I'm moving to California. I'm going to go, the whole little pity party of like having to start my life over again. And Carly, like before I could even get this little pity party out, was just like, Devyn, that's so exciting. Like you're getting to go to California. And I had to like step back and be like, oh man, like that is really exciting. Like why don't I think that way? So it is bittersweet, but you have those people to remind you that, it's a good thing too. So
yeah, and like, I'm here for that. But I also think going back to our conversation that we had was it's interesting about how like when you get so stuck in the path that you're on that you forget like other perspectives in the sense of like you were telling me that and I was just like, that sounds so cool. But because for me,
I'm having an anxiety attack.
yeah. But and like, because for me, I've just been like very stable lately, which you were saying you're envious of. And don't get me wrong, like I do like my routine. I've realized like I'm a routine girl. But then there are some times where I'm like, I just feel like I've been working a lot and I need like a good 3-month break.
And I take it.
Yeah.
It's true. And which I do like have to remind myself, like I'm such an example of that. I don't want, like, I don't believe in the traditional 9 to 5. I think it's beautiful that some people live that and their priorities and what they have and need is different than I've been so lucky to not have to like go down that path just yet, but having that balance of like, man, everyone says that before they have kids or before they got married, they would love to be able to travel more. And I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that thing then. I'm going to make sure that I travel and quit my job as many times as I need to like go and experience. I'm so excited about road trips from like San Francisco to LA and just seeing what happens in between. So
yeah, and I think I was just talking about this. I think when I was younger and you had those jobs throughout college or whatever it was, and the schedule changed every week. I feel like I thrived off of that because it was like some stability, but it was also like, oh, I might have a random Wednesday off and like, that's kind of cool, but now it's like, it is nice knowing Monday through Friday I get every weekend, but then it's also like, dang, I wish I could just like take today off and not have to like take PTO.
Yep. I'm taking some time off in September and I'm an independent contractor. So, I've been like letting my clients know ahead of time, like, hey, I'm going to take these days off. And one of them was like, oh, do you have to like ask permission to do that? And I turned and I looked at her and I was like, hell no, I just block it off on my schedule if I want the day. And I love that flexibility.
Well, I think the world is changing, right? Like post pandemic, quote unquote, like I think people are making that more a priority to be able to like, I'm going to go try this thing because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I guess we're going up on soon, but who would have guessed that ever happened? So you have to just take those risks and close doors, open them as many times as you need to, because who could have ever like, that's just crazy. In January 2020, I was at Disney World, like no big deal. And then a couple months later, shut down. Like who could have predicted that? So you just kind of have to go with it. And that's the beauty of it. These jobs all have to kind of adjust now, I feel like, as far as like accepting that this younger generation's coming along and they want a whole different work schedule and work-life balance. And so I think that's cool that we're all being that example, in different ways.
Yeah, and I was telling Shamina, like, I think the younger generation is more, they set mental health as a priority. And I think that's awesome because I feel like the changes are just going to come through that once we get like the older generation out of the rulemaking.
Yeah, they've moved on. That's, so their next chapter of life.
They grow out of power. How about that?
Yeah, that's
good. So Devyn, with the how do I want to phrase this? More of like the frequent like changes, life changes that you make. How do you find stability during like times of change or transition for you?
Well, again, April, March, April, and May were pretty like dark months where there was so many changing where I was moving. I left a relationship. I had a friend, like a really close friend, move away. My other friend like teased me and said she was moving away. And to be honest, like you have to kind of go through the pain. Like I really feel like May and June, I really sat in that and just kind of asked myself so many questions. But words of affirmations and podcasts, like the amount of podcasts I listen to on a day, just to make sure that those like that positive thinking and new ways of thinking are going into my head versus all those things are happening. So I want to go into this doubtful place of like, I don't know anything anymore. Now I don't know where the roof over my head is going to be. I don't know who my partner is anymore. I don't know my friends. My friend group has to change now. So it's been really interesting. But I think just making sure that you feed your mind with positivity. It sounds so cheesy, but it really is the truth, because that was finally what it took for me to be like, wow, and gratitude list every night, like writing a gratitude list and praying for other people, just like, and it's amazing what that does. Like you put that love out into the world, you feel better, because that's what people are here for. We're here to like serve each other, and I think we forget that. And so I think like listening to positive things and make sure you feed your mind correctly is really really and letting yourself rest. Like those two things are just so important, so important. But yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts, like maybe a little crazy, like over and over and over again if I need to, but it stops me from thinking negative thoughts. So why not? So
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're trying to like have this balance and, like allowing yourself to like experience the stressors and the emotions, but not getting like sucked into the cycle and not being able to like break out of it. And so it seems like those are more of like your anchors of, I can feel this way, but this is how I do stay grounded. This is how I can know that I'll be able to pull myself out of it.
yeah, for sure. And I think reminding yourself what you've been through, like you're so stuck in your own head in those moments where like all of a sudden I realized like, oh, I've been through change before. You know what to do. The pain of going through that, the process sucks, but you also know you've been there before. You're a human being who's experienced change before. Like change is so beautiful. I don't know why it's such a negative, there's such a negative view on it, but change is absolutely such a good thing, a beautiful thing. So
I think you really said something that resonated with me, and I feel like change is great, but it's the fear of not knowing what comes with that change. But when you had said like you remind yourself that you can do it, and you remind yourself of how far you come, like that's something that like I do a lot, especially because I feel like I'm in this weird phase right now where it's like it's been a good amount of time since I went through my relationship, but it's almost like I'm experiencing those feelings again. And so it's like lately I've been feeling like kind of like going backwards, but I know it's just like a hill. But I remind myself, like if I start to feel like overwhelmed, I'm like, remember what you went through. Like remember you are so strong because you chose yourself. And during those hard times, like, yeah, it was hard, but you worked through it, you felt it, and you did it. So I remind myself, like, if something's happening that I'm like nervous about, or I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm like, if I did that, I have to be able to do this, like, yeah, it might be hard and I'll give myself a moment, but I keep reminding myself, like, I've done harder things than this. Like, I'm strong, I can do this.
Yeah, for sure. You did the hard thing, like, and that is, you did that. So I don't know why we forget it so quickly. It's like, wow, like we go through this painful experience, and then how quickly our minds, like the fact that we went through a pandemic, like we weren't allowed to leave our house. Like no one's acting like they ever went through that now. Like you go on the streets, no one is acting like that. And it's just blowing my mind. Like, wait a minute, like what happened here? Because this breakup, it wasn't, I mean, it's been hard, but at the same time I've been through some worse breakups, and I was like, if I can get through that, you can get through anything, girl. Like relax, like better is to come. Like, and that's point blank bottom line. Like if you're living, then change is gonna happen, so you better get used to it.
Yeah.
See, I envy that because I hate change with a passion. And I think I've always hated just like change and the instability, or I think the like trauma survivor in me is like, we don't like change. Change means that, like, bad things happen. And now in adulthood, it's like trying to break out of that mold. And, you know, change can be more of like a metamorphosis instead of like a trauma trigger, and being able to like grow and expand instead of feeling like you're sucked back into old patterns.
Yeah. And I love that. That's such a good way of putting it. Because I mean, my family, we've moved constantly. Like, I think I finally counted, and even not, I don't know if I even remember all the houses we lived in, but I'm 33 and we moved 36 times. So it's like, I'm right there with you. Like, every time I have to move, even in May, it was such a trigger for me. I realized, I'm like, why am I going to such a dark place? Like, oh, because you're moving. Oh, because when you were younger, you didn't have that. Like, that was so eye-opening to know, like, man, that was like a trauma trigger, just like you said. Like, it's crazy. But also, like, knowing that I've moved from South Florida to Tampa, and even Tampa, the memories I have of Carly and you guys, like, you guys were, it's like, you guys are so, like, you're younger than me, but you guys watched me grow up just like I watched you grow up, right? Like, there's just so many beautiful things about that. And even Carly, when we were little, she was like my little cousin. And then all of a sudden it was like college hit, and like, oh, this is my girl now. Like, you know, she stopped asking me to braid her hair and paint her nails. I mean, I probably still painted her nails in college, but it was just so different. But it's just so cool to see that, like, transition of just, that was change, you know? And so for us to make sure that we're practicing, like, no, it's okay to go in that direction. Change is good, and not get triggered by it. Like, I mean, that's probably the starting point, is recognizing that for sure.
Well, it's
because stability is fake, you know.
I think about what you just said of like growing up, and when you were going through your like one big relationship, I think back in the day I thought you were like so old and mature, you know, like, and I'm like, she was probably like 22, 23, like, you know, and it's like,
barely.
I'm
talking about like,
it was like
Yellow Mustang
and her man, and they pick me up from USF and we drive around Tampa, and it was like,
oh,
she's like 5 years older than me.
yeah, it was. And now you're caught up with me, girl. Like, you're doing things. I'm so proud of you. All that change.
Day by day.
But
oh, no. Okay. Well, I was gonna talk, but I'm like, I want to make sure I give Shamina enough time.
You're good.
Yeah, I want to hear about Shamina. I liked the trauma trigger word. I really liked hearing that. So,
you know, it's the therapist in me got to come out.
Well, I did get my first therapist during that time, May and June. That was really dark for me. I have gotten my first therapist. So I've had 2 therapy sessions, and it's been wonderful. So
that's
good
exciting.
job on doing all the work in the world that you do, because it's needed right now.
Thank you. I was just looking at my schedule today, and usually I only work 25 hours a week. And to some people that's like, oh my God, that's not that much. But, you know, I see clients and then I have to do all the notes, all of this stuff, but it's been picking up a lot more consistently. And this week it's very rare that I have all of my clients' schedule show up. Usually like somebody has to reschedule, or they cancel, or they don't show up, or what have you. But like everybody showed up this week except for one person. And I was like, God damn, no wonder I'm tired. And just try.
Well, you're probably drained, right? Like, I would imagine that's.
I think it's getting better now. I think in the height of the pandemic, it was like super intense because, you know, that's all anybody was ever talking about. And then I'm also personally going through a pandemic, and then showing up for my clients as a therapist while they're going through a pandemic. So that's been kind of an interesting dynamic, just to see like the ebbs and flows of like anxiety around the pandemic, or, you know, just one of my main questions that I get, or that I ask new clients is like, how did the pandemic impact you? Because I think it's like a disservice to just totally skip over like those couple of years. And I think it has completely changed things for us and put a lot of stuff into perspective.
Yeah, I would imagine, like, my question thought is always like, how did we go through all of that together and then just kind of like bounce back? Like, granted, a lot has changed, but we also too were just kind of thrown back into the grind, to the hustle. And I mean, people are becoming more aware, things are changing, but it does just kind of feel like the rush and like the speed of life is just back. And how that affected all of us, like just to pretend like it didn't happen.
I think that's
I love that
part is like we're expected to just jump back into things and like not take a breather of like, because like what Shamina was saying is like I feel like the pandemic made me a lot more introverted, like I think in general, but yeah, like it's like I don't like being around big crowds anymore, like I'd rather just do small group things, and like I'm slowly opening up, but I'm just like not, and just with everything else that's happening in the world too, it's just like I don't know, man. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the scary part too, right? Because even I was going to mention what you were saying before is like, don't forget to like do life with other people. Like I forget that when I'm in my dark little place, that's like when I need people the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so even still, like you being scared, I know so many people like that are like big crowds. They don't go to grocery stores anymore. They work from home now. And so that people exposure, like now change is even a scarier thing for people because they don't even know how to function day to day. Like you have to go to work and get dressed and be nice to other people or not get irritated by every little thing another person does. And it's like, you don't know what that person went through during these past couple of years. So can you like, you're having your own anxieties, but that person's having their own anxieties too. So like to balance that off or something, but it's a strange place for change to grow. And
don't know how to go back to work 5 days a week. Like now that I work from home, I had to go to the office one day, like 2 weeks ago or something. And I told first off, I told her I cannot do a whole day. So I came in like mid-morning, and then I was like, I'm exhausted. Like we were there for like 3 or 4 hours, and all my coworkers were like, how did we do this 5 days a week? And then we would like go to the grocery store after work and like ding, ding, ding. Like we were all like by 4 o'clock, we're like, can we like dip out? We are tired. And my supervisor's like, yeah, let's get out of here. Like we were just like, just like having to be aware of other people is so mentally exhausting that like I didn't realize it when that's what I did every day. Like when I went to the office, it was like, oh, whatever. But like now when you're like, oh, I have to make small talk with you and I have to make small talk with you. And it's like, like I don't have the energy for this. Please just don't talk to me.
But how do we balance that, right? Like, because you can't stay that way forever, Carly. I know you like it and you're saying it in your little shell, but at the same time, like the world needs Carly to shine too. So like being a teacher, I don't get that like luxury of being able, and like same with you guys, like I pour out so much energy to my students that when I come home, like I do want to shut down, but also it's like sometimes I hear people that work from home and just like the complaints you guys have, I just like, oh my God, like I can't hear their complaints. They had to deal with someone today. Like I'm constantly, my one friend in Florida, like she's in South Florida. I'm just like, Nadine, like you have, like what? You have to talk to someone today? Like had to go to the mailbox and speak to someone and is throwing a fit about it. Like you had to say hello to someone? Girl, get out of here.
I like my people. Yes, but like
your people are easy to love. Yeah, exactly. But
new people are hard, because it's like you have to do this like small talk, like, hey, what do you like to do? Oh, I like to do, and it's like, girl, I ain't got time for this. Are we gonna be friends or not? Are we gonna be cool? We gonna hang or not? Let me know.
Shamina, as a therapist, what would you have to say to Carly right now?
Well, in my professional opinion,
Shamina's the same way. Get out of here.
Listen,
it doesn't mean it's right.
I am very introverted. I will say that, yes. But I recently, in the month of July, I started going back into the office 2 days a week. And I have been telehealth since the pandemic. So it had been over 2.5 years since I had even done therapy with people in person. And it was exhausting at first. I was like super nervous for the change. I was even telling Carly, we were talking one day, I have a lot of anxiety. I'm a very anxious person. And so I like weeks in advance, I'm like losing sleep. I'm like planning out what I'm going to wear, how is it going to be like being back in the chair, being in person. And Carly's like, well, like what? Are you going in tomorrow? I was talking to her about like an outfit or something. I was like, no, it's next week. I need to be prepared. And I feel like that's how I tend to handle change, is like my anxiety starts to spike and, I want to feel in control. I want to know like what to expect. But I have found that I think because of the pandemic and I was so isolated because all of my friends live at least an hour and a half away or they're out of state. And then I was working from home, telehealth. So I had no like in-person interaction, that now I'm starting to get like more excited when I see like people in person, or I'm like, oh, like are we going to talk? Am I going to talk to a human being and like get to know somebody else? So I think before I was like, I have no capacity for meeting new people. Like, just tell me your trauma. Let's get over the small talk and the bullshit and like go from there. But now I think I'm appreciative more of like those smaller moments of connection. And I even have a colleague who now we're working in the office together. So we've been like, I'll go into her office when we have a break, or, we'll go grab lunch together or something like that. And I don't think I realized how much I miss like those small moments of getting to know somebody in a non-professional role, because I think that's the balance for me. It was like, it's so exhausting to like be a therapist and like doing that because it's one-sided. But now, I get to like talk about myself, or, help other people like learn more about me, instead of I have to be professional and not say anything about myself to these people. And I'm really enjoying more of that balance, because I don't think I realized how lonely I was until I went back in person.
I love that. Yeah, I guess working at a gym, like, and I don't know if this is with age, I've gotten more comfortable talking to people, or maybe I worked at a gym for a really long time. I've done a little bit of everything. I've chauffeured, I've worked at a gym, I've been a cleaning lady, teacher for many years. But the thing is, and I remember being in a class and my friend who we were doing a project together, I was so nervous. Like, public speaking is not for me. I'm trying to get better at it, but like all of us, but we went to go in front of the class, and I went back to school later, because when I was in my college years, school was not for me. I could not stand my peers. But later in life, and I remember going up in the class, and she was just like, who are these? Like, these people aren't any better than you. And I just remember her saying that, and was such a moment, like maybe it just hit me in that right moment. I was like, you're damn right. Who are, like, these people aren't any better than me. They're probably all nervous too. But just really like, and I'm, Carly, it's just, she's such a light to this world. Like, and Shamina, this, like, the way she can make people laugh, and she is genuine. How I introduce her is like, listen, she's going to be who she is, no matter who she's around, and she's going to burp in front of you. And I just have to prepare you for that. But she is going to be 100% herself all the time. And like, that's not an energy to hide, And so I guess working at the gym and working with children and seeing like the impact that one person can make from just smiling, from having a nice conversation, because the world right now needs a lot of change. Like, we need to be friendlier. There's like Lovers Authentic and Postpirations, everything that I represent is all about just like being that lover of the world. Like, and I have my mistakes too. I judge, I try not to, but I say things harshly, or I make things uncomfortable sometimes. But then when I remember like, wow, like the impact that you have on somebody, or even if I make a friend upset and I didn't mean to, you have to remember like how people perceive you, and like you just smiling at somebody could have changed their whole day. Like, oh, someone noticed me. Like, that is such a special feeling. And especially when you're like, you guys who are light workers, like you guys you have that like wanting to help soul. And there's just something so special about those people stepping up and realizing like, hey, right now is not the time for me to be an introvert, which that is fine. Like, recharge how you need to recharge. But the world needs like the healers and the helpers of the world to step up and change. Like like that is a beautiful change, and it's going to be hard and uncomfortable, but that's what the world needs right now. So I don't know, all the lights of the world just need to like step up and try their best to be there for other people who need it. Like, there's people out there are just, anyone, you can look at them and it's like they're worse off than you, or like your problems maybe don't seem as bad as theirs, and I don't want to compare, but at the same time, like, watch an episode of Grey's Anatomy and you'll be like, oh, okay, at least there's not a tree inside me, maybe I can go have a good day, like, like, I don't know. So I would hope that like the lights of the world, Carly, Shamina, can like just, you guys can remember that like just being around people is a good thing, like not to hide away in your little shell or your sunshine room all the time.
Well,
she's calling you out.
No. No, I have my days where I have my energy and I'm like, let's do this. And then I have my days where I need to recharge and I say, leave me alone.
Give me that 3-hour work week and I'm home.
Hey, I did a lot this week and weekend. Thank you.
I believe it.
I was out in the public doing
I'm just
my
giving you a hard
thing.
time.
I always tell people though, I wanted to say, because how you're like, this is my cousin, she is who she is the moment you meet her. I literally tell people that because I'm like, listen, this is how my cousin introduced me to her friends, because this is how it is. I'm not gonna sugarcoat who I am. Hey,
Nope.
what's up?
Carly is here, and you know her now.
Yes, I think I like prepped an ex once when like they were going to meet Carly for the first time, and I was like, she may seem like a lot, or she's just very loud, but she is great, and you'll get used to it. Like it's fine. Or like I love, because you and I have this history, and so like if new people come into our lives and they just kind of like, you do something and they're like, what? Or like, and we just like shrug it off. We're like, yeah, she does that. Or, like, oh yeah, you get used to it. It's fine kind of thing. And so I like seeing new people's perception of like, did she just do that? Or like, what?
Well, it's funny because like I'll burp and like I don't even notice sometimes, and like my friends don't, and like if someone's new, they'll be like, was that you? And everyone be like, what just happened? Like, no one heard that, and everyone's like, oh, we're just like really used to that. Like it doesn't even
No, I'm pretty sure I make sure to say excuse you every time.
Well, that's like with your mom and the give me your neck. It's like, oh, it's just who she is. You just gotta get used to it, I guess. Give her your neck.
No, that Melanie Russo is she literally, I think it was my 28th birthday party, and she had like all my friends turn around and like wanted to touch their butt or something crazy. Just the Carly and Melanies of the world, no big deal.
Touchy Mel. Gotta love
Touchy Mel. Yeah. You've experienced Touchy
She's
Mel.
one of a kind. She is one of a kind.
Yes. But I like what you said, Devyn, of, being able to kind of like give into the world right now. But I also think the pandemic has changed our perspective about giving into us, because I think before we lived in a society and a culture where it was expected that we give and give and give to other people. And I think the pandemic made us pause and reevaluate, like, how do I give into myself? How can I take care of myself? Because we didn't have that ability to pour as much into other people. And so I see a lot now that, whether it's like professionally or personally, that most of us are just trying to like find this balance again of, how can I take care of myself in this new day and age? Because I do think that things are different and things are changing, but though our culture as a whole wants to get back to the way that things were. And there's this huge kind of resistance, more so with the younger generations, of like, I don't think that's going to work or going to fly. Like, we've had a taste of something different and we don't want to go back to the traditional views. And I think that's a really big, oh gosh, we lost Devyn.
Did you exit her?
No, I didn't touch anything.
Maybe she's gonna rejoin.
Hold for...
While we wait, I was going to say, not that I want to keep having the conversation, but there she is. Did you?
We lost you.
That was my bad. Sorry, go ahead.
She's done. She's like, I'm done with the combo.
I don't want to listen to Shmeen anymore. Click.
No. Please continue. I was really interested. I even went to like press my AirPod. I guess it shuts off like things if you press your AirPod. Did you know that?
I didn't know it could like end a video. I knew it could like pause your audio, but
I went to go like try to be sneaky and like push it back into my ear, and then all of a sudden you disappeared. I'm sorry, guys. I was like, what do I do? What do I do? How do I call them back? Anyways, go ahead.
Basically, the premise of what I was saying is that I think we're just trying to find this balance now of like, how do we take care of ourselves, but also how do we kind of contribute back into society and being able to support other people. And I think that's a really big challenge for most of us right now.
And I would like to point out that not only did we experience a different way of doing things, but we experienced a different way of doing things that works. And
yes.
So the younger generation is like, why are you forcing us to go back to this when this new thing works and we also enjoy it, you know? But I also wanted to say one thing that I feel like, Devyn, I've noticed when me and you have our conversations, you know, our monthly, bi-monthly phone calls, I feel like you are starting to, you're a very like go person, I think, in whether it's your creativity and stuff. And when I went through everything that I went through, that's when I realized I was giving a lot of myself and not giving in. And so now, like Shamina said, I'm finding that balance of like, yes, I'm learning to give to myself now, but I need to find that balance. And I feel like with you now, when we talk, I'm always like feel your feelings, you know, like when me and you talk, because it's so hard to feel those feelings. And I know like when you were going through that breakup and things like that, like we don't want to feel those things because they make us feel some type of way, but they also bring up past feelings and it's really hard. And so like, I think me and you both, like when we have our conversations, when we're on the phone, it's interesting to get both perspectives because now 2 years later, for me, I am learning to like cherish my time because I think before my breakup, I didn't like being alone. I didn't know how to be alone. It wasn't a thing. But then I was like forced to be alone because I chose to be alone. You know, I chose me, and that came with being alone and not knowing what was next. And then I fell into this where like I loved being alone, where I was like, oh my God, I love this. But now I'm like finding that balance, but I'm learning to do what feels right for me instead of what feels right to others. And so going out to the bar and things like that doesn't feel right to me anymore as it had before. And I think a lot of people that knew me when I was younger still expect that version of me. And so it's really like I'm working to break that mold. Like, for instance, I just went to a high school reunion and I feel like a lot of them knew me as like high school Carly, loud. And don't get me wrong, I am loud, but so much is also different about who I am. And so it's just like, it's learning that of like, I think I did a lot to please other people before because I was like, oh, you like that? Okay, let me do it. It's not really hurting me. But then when I went through everything, I was like, physically it's not hurting me, but it's draining. It's a lot to appease these people when I feel like that's not true to me anymore. That's not who I am. I was that person, but that's not where I'm at now, you know?
Yeah. And I love that too. And basically, so a lot of the things that I listen to are all about finding like this neutral ground because I think we're all extremists, right? Like the fact you said, like back in the day, if you thought you were hanging out with Carly by yourself, joke was on you. Carly's bringing 15 other people and you probably won't like half of them. But she said you guys were hanging out. So, you know, and it was so annoying. But then,
so true. That is so true. I just want to point that out, but I've changed.
And so, right, like, so finding like a real important thing for me right now is to not be an extremist, right? Like when we hate someone, it's like I hate them. They're the worst person ever. Or this situation is the worst thing that ever happened. No, like neutralize that, bring it back. Like, because then the next second, oh my gosh, I'm so in love with this person, which I'm a hopeless romantic. I'm a March Pisces and it's going to happen. I'm going to love and I'm going to hate that person within maybe 10 minutes. It could happen. And so finding that neutral ground, because like the extremists, like if we all stopped being extremists, oh my gosh, the world would just be such a better place. But too, you realize you could trust your intuition. And I think that's so hard for women. Like we feel it in literally our tummies when something isn't right. Like, or if you're excited to see someone, you know, you get butterflies, or if you're about to go on stage and talk, you get nervous. And it's like your body tells you everything you need, but why don't we trust our intuition more to know like, the whole time that you were still Carly that whole entire journey, but you were just changing and morphing. But yeah, the extremists, like, because why, like, how do we figure out how to get a young person to not be an extremist? And maybe we could have this whole person at 11 years old, maybe they could even find themselves because we've given them all these tools of like, okay, no, you're not going to be an extremist. You're going to like balance these feelings out. So that is true. You have grown a long way. I didn't mean to like pick on you earlier, call you out, but
no, that's who I was.
I have many thoughts. I love the neutrality piece because I talk a lot about that with my clients. You know, if we're in a really negative space, I don't try and get them into a positive one. We go into a neutral space first. I was like, going into a positive space is toxic and is just as unhealthy as like staying in a negative space. So I love that neutrality piece because I think that's so important and it feels so much more congruent to go from negative to neutral instead of negative to positive for a lot of people, because then you're like kind of getting into like the toxic positivity. This doesn't connect with me, you know, that whole fake it till you make it. Sometimes I think that works, but more times we just feel like an imposter and, you know, we just stay stuck in a negative place. So that's part one. Part two, I have three parts. I loved what you said about like trusting your intuition. And again, like I talk with my clients a lot about how we speak a different language than our bodies. And part of the work that I do as a therapist is like, I kind of phrase it as teaching my clients how to speak the language of their bodies, and that we know certain communication styles. Like we know when our bodies tell us that we have to go to the restroom or that we're hungry or that we're tired. But when it comes to like the emotional communication, we don't know how to understand what it's telling us. And so we ignore it or we dismiss it or we push it down because it's uncomfortable and we don't know how to deal with it. And when we start to kind of speak the same language and we tap into that, then it's so much easier to like move throughout the world and better understand ourselves, because now you literally like know what's happening and you're like, I have these butterflies, exactly, and that's maybe my anxiety, or like my thoughts are doing this, like that could be X, Y, or Z. So I love that perspective. And then my final piece is I don't know why this has never clicked in my mind before, Carly, but as you were like talking, when I met you all those years ago in high school, you were never like, I never expected the extroverted, super high energy, like super fun, we're going to go out, we're going to go do something. That wasn't like the version of you that like I first saw. I saw like the soft side, the you know, like the one-on-one like connection. And then I accepted the like high energy, the extroverted, like the loud piece. And at first I think that was hard for me because I am not that person. And so it was just like, yep, this is what she does when, you know, there's a group of people. If I want us to be alone, I have to be very specific. I want us to be alone when we hang out. But I think it's really interesting how like just our friendship and our perspective, like that was something that I noticed from the get-go. And it was like, okay, this is how you are like in social settings, but when it's just you and I, you don't act like that. And then the more consistent that you had like the high energy behavior, like wanting to go out and all of that stuff, I think that's when you and I just kind of like naturally started to drift more. And then as like that kind of calmed back down and you were tapping more into like, I would say your authentic self, because I do think there's a balance for you of like the extroverted, but also the, you know, like introverted piece. Those are the moments where like you and I kind of like reconnect, is, you know, some of that like facade or the expectation or even like the people pleasing, it seems like you were trying to like get out before of like, oh, like people like this, like let me keep doing it. So it was just kind of like a pattern that I had noticed like in our friendship, is like in the beginning, that's what I saw from you. And then, you know, like our college years, it was just like party, doing this, doing that. And I was like, I'm going to stay inside. And like, I don't want to do those things. And like, that's not me. And so we just kind of naturally started to drift. And then as like life happened again and that slowed down, then, you know, you and I kind of like reconnect. So I thought that was an interesting observation and perspective.
Devyn forced me to party in those college years.
Oh, yeah. We had some fun nights in Ybor. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, we should pull up that old picture of all of us at Prada, was it?
Was that Shamina's birthday? That was for her birthday. Oh God, I don't know how I did that, because now I'd be like, this music is too loud. Please don't touch me. I'm sweating right now and I need to go home.
It'd be a miserable time.
What?
It would be a miserable time. Like I would not.
I would be. And you know, that's the thing, is I've learned now when to accept, like, I'm not going to be fun. Like, you know, because a couple of my friends, they were going on a girls trip to the beach. I thought, come on, come with us. I'm like, I'm not gonna be this Carly. I'm gonna be a grumpy Carly that's gonna be sweating, wanting to know when we're gonna go home because I don't like the beach. And they're like,
It's the worst.
I'm like, I've accepted that. I don't want to ruin your time. You please go and enjoy. When you choose a girls' trip to the mountains, you let me know.
It's so difficult.
It works. I'm trusting my intuition.
Oh gosh. Well, I did like a point that I have words, but I'm going to keep it for a private conversation with Carly. Because when I come to Florida, all I want to do is be at the beach. And I'm just like, how do I hang out with Carly and do the beach at the same time? I get Carly to go to the beach and it doesn't happen. She literally last time got to the parking lot and left, you know.
I'll meet you at the pool, not the beach.
Yes, let's do a pool day, girl. You still got your son.
No, I live in Houston, Texas. Did you not hear that before? I live in Houston, Texas. I want to be at the beach in Florida.
This is literally our conversations every time she says she's coming to Florida. So our viewers, you are literally getting our real live conversations of when we're on the phone. And she said, we're going to the beach, and then I get to the park.
Carly doesn't even look forward to me coming to visit anymore. Like, but Devyn's coming.
Gotta go to the beach, man.
No, you don't. Because you don't.
No, I won't. Tricks on you. Jokes on you.
But we won't talk about that right now. That's for another episode.
He's gonna call me after this and be like, Carly,
you told me to share my feelings, and this is how I feel. No, but a point I did like that you made, Shamina, was about the toxic positivity. A lot of what I went through a couple months ago, I realized that that's what had happened to my life. Like, I have been through all these, things that were super traumatic for me. And then all of a sudden I realized that like these bad things happen. And so it made me just want to be positive, because I was just like, because I had some very close family friends pass away, like people who just like near and dear to my heart. And my parents and I were going through it at a certain stage of life, and they were the people that helped us like mend our relationship. And then all of a sudden, just like that, like they passed away, and it was just so unexpected. And watching their children suffer from their deaths, and it just made me forget everything that I went through with my mom and dad. Like none of it mattered anymore, because I just wanted so badly to be appreciative, which is true. Like, I don't think as Americans, I don't think we really make death like a reality. Like some cultures, I feel like honor it and speak about it a lot more. And Gary Russo, my father, he definitely talks about it a lot. But I think there's something beautiful that it made me like this super positive, super grateful person. And I could share that with other people. But then once I realized that I went through this dark spell, I was just like, oh, I never actually being in a relationship, I actually wanted to work, but being triggered in that relationship and trying so hard that I realized, wow, like all those things still existed inside of me. I just like, because these really bad things happened, I felt, it was almost not a fake gratitude, because I really do feel like so appreciative for being here. Like we lack nothing right now in this moment. Like we're able to sit here and have this like conversation, and we can laugh, we can cry. Like that's so special. But it was really like an eye-opening moment of just like, wow, like I pushed all of that aside, and now I'm trying to have this healthy relationship, and I was part of the problem because I got triggered. Like it was so bad. I realized that alcohol is a huge trigger for me, especially like men that I'm seeing or men that I'm dating drinking alcohol. I don't trust them. I feel like that's when they make bad decisions, and just what alcohol can, it changes all of us. I'm not the best person depending on the time of the month when I'm drinking. And that was so scary for me, because I got so triggered. This event happened, and my ex at the time, he is not like my exes from the past, but a couple of my exes have just left me with that scar. And so he, one night out of like our whole relationship, had gotten so like the worst I'd ever seen him. And it was such a trigger. We're like, I'm not going back to that life. Like, no way, no how. And I completely painted him as this person that he wasn't, all because of my triggers. And that like really was the start of the end of our relationship, because I was triggered. It wasn't really, he had a night, and he knows that it was wrong. And he knew like, how much it hurt me. But realizing all of those things, it was just like, wow, like I need help too. Like in that toxic positivity, I'm trying so hard to like learn the difference between that. Like you said, the fake it till you make it, because that does confuse me. Like you said, it's like sometimes it's good, because sometimes I do think we just need to tighten up and go for it. Like stop with the overthinking, stop with like this and that, I can't do that, I'm scared, da 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 da. Sometimes you need that little tough love to just be like, no, go fake it until you make it, you'll be fine. Like, and you need that push. But then like you said, other times you have to notice when no, like relax, like you're like having a panic attack because of this, so maybe it's not a good thing for you to do this particular thing right now, or you're being triggered in some way, so maybe feel those feelings for a moment and see what it's like. But yeah, so I think it's good that we spread that word a little bit more, especially when you're dealing with change, right? Because it's like change can be super like, oh my gosh, that the grass is greener on the other side, and and that's not always the case. You have to really like neutralize yourself and being like, okay, I'm moving, that's super exciting, but there's also these things here that I'm going to have to deal with, and they're going to be hard, and and to balance that out. So I really like that you pointed that out.
Yeah,
because I'm guilty of that. I will like Carly, when she was going through her phase in life, I literally told her, I was like, I don't think I'm the person that can be here for you in your healing right now. I don't think I'm the person for you. And that was so hard, because I was coming to Florida just to see her, and I just wanted her to step up and like forget for a moment all the things that were going on, but that wasn't necessarily right for her. Like that was selfish of me, but at the same time, I'm like, girl, we're together. Like, let's just be happy. Like, can we just share this moment? Because I do believe if you don't sometimes make yourself just hold it together, like for the world or your loved ones, sometimes you do miss out on amazing memories, all because you're having like just a dark thought or a dark moment. Like, don't mess up like life is right in front of us. So if you don't just like sometimes fake it till you make it, you're going to miss out on some beautiful memories that you just don't get back, so yeah, so don't miss out on those moments. But Carly, go to the beach with me.
and I do kind of agree, because a lot of times like people, our emotions are so strong that they can like hold us back or prevent us from doing those things. But I also think you have to be ready and willing and open to, a different experience, or just kind of acknowledging like, hey, I may be feeling this way, but it doesn't have to define me, or, it doesn't have to carry over into other areas of our lives. Naturally, I think it just kind of does, but it takes practice, I think, to be able to just kind of recognize and acknowledge and continuing to like move through things. And, I tell Carly, and I talk all the time, she's like, Shamina, I can never be a therapist, like all of my stuff would just come out and, what have you. And I'll say, I could be like crying 5 minutes before a session, and like none of my clients would ever know, and I have my own emotions and what have you. And so I think I naturally like hold shit in, and that's what I do trauma wise. That's what I've always done. And so sometimes I think being a therapist is almost like reinforced some of those behaviors, is like, I need to push this down. This needs to go away, because in this moment, like, this is not about me. And, I need to show up for my clients, but it's more so about like how to do that in a healthy way, or acknowledge like, this does belong to me and I want to come back and revisit this, but I can also be present and connected in this moment, doing whatever it is that I want to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's when I started to realize I was maturing, because I've been an emotional human being for a long time. Throughout my whole life, it's just been a train roller coaster of emotions. And once I realized like, oh, okay, I'm going to put this here for a little bit, and then I'm going to go and enjoy the people. I'm going to show up for them. And then I'm going to come back when it's time. Like, because during April and May, I would go to work. I'd try to be there for my employees the best I could. I was there for my babies, take care of them. And I barely made it home in time just to like break down and cry. But that to me, that made me proud, because I was just like, I showed up, I did the best I could today. Now this is the appropriate space for me to break down and have this moment for me, because it is special when you break down like that and you have those aha moments afterwards. And so like it takes maturity to do that. And anyone should be proud of themselves for doing that.
I agree.
I would like to make a statement.
Uh-oh.
Opinions aren't allowed after, or
just going back to the beach situation.
Do you want to start?
Look, you see what she does to me? No,
Yes. My
I
finger
was
came
going
out.
to say,
I'm calling this episode Carly's going to the beach.
Carly and the beach.
Yes.
No, but it's so you were talking about like that whole thing when you had come and visited. And it's funny because I feel like when you had come, it was like 2 months. I wasn't even really fully through everything.
Yeah.
And it was such a limbo period it was such a limbo period of like, he could still potentially be reaching out to me because we still have that communication open, and that was like stressful. But then also like, I think literally like almost a year of when we were together, I was holding myself together and not and I was like what Shamina said for her is like, she shoved it down. I was doing that because I didn't feel like heard or, like validated and shit like that. So then when I finally got out of it, and like, I wasn't even fully out of it at that point, that I didn't have the emotional capacity to hold things in, like I wanted to. And I feel like I'm still learning that now because like you said, like with the extremist is like, I feel like I was so extreme in holding myself together when I wasn't, that now I'm like, no, I'm not going to hold anything back because I did it for so long. And it was so like damaging in a sense of like exhausting and just like it breaks you down, So I think especially at that time, I was just like, I cannot hold I remember because we were there for a friend's wedding, and I remember I was so emotional seeing them like dancing because I was so happy, and it was such a emotional thing. I was so happy to see them so happy that I was just like breaking down crying because like to me that was such a big deal because it was like, that's what I want, like, and it was so intense. But like honestly, like that whole wedding and that reception, the whole time I was like, I can do this because for me that was holding myself together, so like it was a whole thing of like, but I still feel like how you said, like the extremist, and like I totally get what you're saying, because there's so many things now that I'm still learning. Like I have to learn to balance it, like when it comes to like dating and things. I feel like because of what I allowed in my past relationship, now I'm like, hell no. But I'm like, there has to be a balance of like, just because they might show signs from the past doesn't mean that's what it is, and like, I have to remember no one's perfect. I'm not even perfect. So if they don't have X, Y, and Z, well, if they have Y and Z, maybe it's okay that they don't have it, or, whatever. But it's still learning. I'm still, and it's funny because recently with Shamina, it like hit me and I broke down again. And I was like, I don't know why. I had seen some stuff, but it just like hit me and I was just like, this sucks. Like this sucks, And so it's just funny how
what sucked exactly? What do you mean? Just like the feelings you were feeling, or?
Yeah, like the feelings coming back and then being so strong when so much time had passed, and not only that, but like the fact that I'm having these feelings when so much time has passed, it like pisses me off, because it's like, no, I thought I was in a good space. And then like what we've been talking about is like, I don't want to let myself go down that path. So it's like, it's that balance of like, I have to let myself feel it because I am feeling this way, but I don't want to let myself feel it so much that I go down and I'm just always feeling it. And so like, that's been like, and then I'm like, okay, some of these feelings are coming back. And like, even Shamina, she'll be like, well, what happened around this month? Like, did anything? And I'm like, I don't think anything. And then I'm like, oh, I moved into my house this month or this, and then I'm like, oh, I didn't realize like it was a thing for me, and even like now I'm like, granted, I've been doing a lot, so I'm just kind of like exhausted and like on over, but I'm like, I'm trying to be like,
you worked 2 hours, 2 hours today.
Huh?
You worked 2 hours today.
8 hours. Thank you.
I'm just teasing you. 2 hours is rough too.
Yeah.
No, but that it's no, but that totally makes sense because like again, the extremist is such a hard like really like, but once you start, like I think that was what made me realize like, dang, I'm an extremist. Like we all are. Like look at like even being a Democrat or a liberal. Like the fact that we even are not Democrat. Yeah, you only get to be a Democrat or a liberal. Okay.
I wish.
Those are the only people in the world. The world is a happier place now. Okay. But no, a Republican or Democrat, like you literally, like, how are we supposed to put this many people in the United States of America in only two groups? Like people don't even know if they're male or female anymore, let alone like you want us to only put ourselves in a Republican or Democrat. And then you also have to be like, if you're a liberal, you're, oh my gosh, you're like so far out there. And then if you're a conservative, it's like, we don't even want to go there, but it's like, I don't know, like what there is a balance. It's supposed to be a balance in this life of both of those things. And if we did, then we'd all be happier. And too, like your thoughts and like, I'm all for honoring those feelings, but also we like almost talk ourselves into a bad mood or like we also like keep going down this rabbit hole of bad emotions when really that is the moment, like for me anyways, like there's a time and a place to address it. But then if it's just in the middle of the day, why do you need to have that thought? Like, why do you need to like make yourself cry or hurt your own feelings? Like, I think if we just try like, okay, like what's helping me a lot instead of like reminiscing on the past and what was so great about it, dreaming of like my future and what it could be, because that is the unknown. So you literally have millions of possibilities of what life could be, but you're stuck on this possibility that you already actually can check off. You already had that experience. So, and even still, there's room for that to grow. But if we just kind of like daydreamed a little bit more versus like hurting our own feelings constantly of going back to those feelings that they're negative, they're not really good for us. So,
and I think like you said, a good point is like perception. Like you said, oh, I went through it. I check it off. Like I can check it off of my list instead of it being like, oh my God, I had to go through this. Like that's part of my story. Like that's how we got to where I am. But obviously that takes a lot of practice and, but I definitely think like that's something I do. And like, even sometimes I'll catch myself like romanticizing like the past and I'm like, why? And then I literally like will write a list of like, this is why I'm not, like this is why I'm where I'm at today and I'm not there. And there's no reason to romanticize it. But yeah, it definitely like, I feel like if you don't have the tools or you weren't like taught the tools and resources to do that, it can be very hard for someone to pull themselves out of that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we realize how like we get to change the narrative and, kind of like rewriting the script of how we perceive things. And, if you've lived like 28 years of your life thinking a certain way, it's going to take a little bit of time to like unlearn and do those things. And, I talk to my clients, I'm like, it's not going to take, however old you are and like double that or what have you, but it takes time to like unlearn and to change these patterns of behavior because, kind of keeping with our theme, like we are creatures of habit. And we like our things to stay the same in the way that we usually do them because it gives us consistency. It gives us control. It lets us know what's going on and what to expect. And so I think just growth and change or times of change and transition are so ungrounding for people because we're never taught how to deal with it in a healthy way, or we don't live in a culture where that's promoted. I mean, if you just think about the way that we're raised, people ask us in kindergarten, what do you want to do when you grow up? For the whole rest of your life, you're going to live like 50 years after 50, 60, 70 years. And you're supposed to pick one thing and stick to it forever. There's never supposed to be any change or transition. So early on, we're like getting fed this narrative and this message of change isn't supposed to happen. You're supposed to know what you want to do. You're supposed to be okay with that stuff, which is why I also think that we react so negatively at times to change or things ending, because we live in a culture where that is a bad thing.
Yeah, I believe that. Growing up, like my parents moved around a lot. And as a child, you can't understand that. You're just like, why? Like we literally moved across the street one time. I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why I'm carrying a lamp over to across the street. Why are we even moving? I don't understand. And my mom would just always, well, change is the only thing you can count on. And I would literally want to shake my mother and just be like, that is so stupid. And of course, now at 33, I can be like, wow, well, I really hated that. And it's the truth. But it's the truth. Change is the only thing you can count on. But it's funny that as humans, we're trying to like stay the same. We have our routines. Like, it blows my mind when I have friends that your parents still live in the same house. Like, that's mind blowing for me. My parents don't even live in the same state as me anymore. Like, that just isn't my life. I just don't know. And so sometimes when I hear people complain about just like little things, I have to find myself and remind myself, like, okay, let them go through this. But like, for somebody who I just feel like change, it was never like in my control. I was just like, okay, we'll just get over it. Like, you're fine. Like, you'll adapt. Like, I've had to live in so many different people's homes and had to move so many different times and make new spaces like a safe place for me, that it was just like, okay, you're complaining about this. Like, okay, it's a move, get over it. And so I do wish I could find that balance, and other people too, because it's annoying. Like, if you think that your whole life was like you were meant to have so much control, I don't believe that. I really wish more often people kind of experience like this unexpected amount of change like I have in my life, because I just, first of all, I don't think it's fair. I just like constantly always being like, change is just like thrown at me out of my control. But then at the same time, it's just like, man, that's the source of so much of my anxiety. I understand why people try to hold on to what they know so much. But if you don't go into the unknown, you miss out on so many amazing things, like so many memories yet again of just like life is about change. And I don't know, it's crazy. But some people, like, they're okay where they are. So I don't know that balance of finding like, okay, this is good that someone is able to be that way for 40 years. But for me, I was just like, okay, well, I was never given that gift of life being so like consistent. But I don't know, it's funny, even like Carly, like you said, perspective, it's just, I don't know, it's interesting.
You don't know the balance yet.
Yes. She said something about validating. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I think this was way back now, but something about validating.
Validating others.
I think like what you were saying about being an extremist, I wanted to go back to that, as far as like you were saying something about maybe when you're transitioned to like finding this, your more authentic self that you needed. And I feel like I went through that too, where it was just like you didn't feel seen or heard. So now every mother effer in the building better hear and see me, or I can't talk to you. Like, I am learning to let go of that, because it's really, you don't need to really be seen or heard by anyone. Like, all the laws of attraction and all the things I've read up about that, it's just like, you don't need any of that. You need yourself. Like, you literally just need yourself, and you don't need to be heard or seen. But I feel like that's such a trend in society right now, of this like women wanting to be heard for their causes, men resisting too, because that Deshaun Watson thing is driving me crazy. Not to go off topic or anything, but the amount of like that is just the perfect example of being an extremist and trying to validate. So many guys, I posted something, he's a football player and went through this whole like sexual assault thing, and I posted it on my Instagram, and it was just this story basically talking about like 26 women accused him of sexual assault. He just got a huge like signing bonus, or whatever you call it in football, and he only got like a 6-game suspension or something. I had so many male like my audience on Instagram try to justify what he went through, and what like the women did this and da 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 da. And I was just like, where was this energy when women needed you to stand up for women's rights? And it's like this extremist, and I feel like we're battling as even men and women, like trying to like, everyone's just trying to be seen or heard now at this point. Like, even with all the protests going on in 2020, everyone is just trying so hard to be seen and heard. And how do we like let everyone be seen and heard and like change and go into like this new season of life where all this change is happening, and accept that?
Well, I think like you make a good point, is unfortunately, I feel like with the past and what was taking place, that this world became so divided in literally any way that it could. Yeah. Color, age, sex, literally in any way. It was like there's not an option to be a balance. You have to choose, and
yes.
And I think that's what's dividing us even more, is the fact that we are forcing people to choose left or right, yes or no, instead of being like, you know what, I actually feel this way for some things and I feel this way for others. But it's like, if someone heard you say that, they'd be like, no.
Yeah.
And so it's literally, I feel like now in every category, it's you have to choose. And
Yeah.
I
You have
feel
to
like
decide.
we need to, it's going to be a long way, unfortunately, but I really feel like there needs to be that balance, because really nothing can function when anything is at an extreme. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
we need to have that balance of knowing, like, sometimes we're going to have to sway right to make it balance, and then sometimes we're going to have to sway left, and that's how you maintain that balance, is knowing you go back and forth. But
Yeah. So Shamina, how do you feel like we can like make sure that we create that balance for change? Because like you said, all of this is all change. It's a new way of thinking. But how do we get older people to feel heard and seen? How do we get younger people to feel heard and seen, and like go through that transition? Like, what can we do as humans, I guess, is what I'm wondering, of like, to help people accept the change and the most like uncomfortable, but also like, I'm here for you. It's hard. I understand. And maybe that's my problem, because like I said, I just, so much change has always been thrown at me that I'm just like, you're complaining that, you know, you have to change your shoes, or like just the smallest little inconvenience of someone's day, and they just act like it's the whole world's coming to an end. And I feel like I get so annoyed with some people. So I'm trying to find that balance of like, okay, how do you say like the uncomfortable thing, but then also say it in such a way that they take and receive that message from me? Because, you know, change is happening. Change is here.
Buttercup girl.
Yeah.
Huh?
Devyn's that suck it up buttercup.
Yeah.
I am, and I'm super sensitive at the same time. So it's like,
I know, I'm like, she'd be coming at me, but if someone were to come at her, she'd be like, what did you just say? And it's like,
yeah, don't have, yeah, my poor boyfriends, like they, it's the truth. But I'm trying to find that balance. I'm trying, but it's like, I feel like almost like in a way where I just feel like responsible for saying that uncomfortable thing to people, but then also wanting to respect, like, I'm supposed to be like a healer. So I ended up getting a lot of friends upset with me, because it's like, I want them to accept that change in their life. And so I'm just like, no, you need to do this, you need to do that. And maybe some would view it as toxic positivity, but then other times I'm just like, no one's telling you the harsh reality. And like, maybe harsh is the wrong word. Like, somehow I want to create that balance of like, no, the world's changing. So, but I also want, like, I don't want older white, like, not all older white men are bad. Like, not all, the white man isn't all bad. My father is a beautiful white man. And like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, but in today's society, it's like the white man. Okay, well, how do you think my poor white man father feels? Like, he feels forgotten about. So I can understand like this extreme of why it's so hard for them to take, like, oh, women want rights. Like, it's so mind blowing for them. But it's like, do you realize like what women are going through? But at the same time, I want them to be heard and seen also. But I mean, I guess there's a level to how I want to hear and see them. But I don't know. That's really hard for me. So I wonder, Shamina, how you feel about like, how do we walk in this world and be an example, and like be that example of letting people feel heard and seen, but also like, this is kind of like the new, you know, they need to accept the change, but do it in a gentle way, I guess, maybe is the question.
Yeah. These are my initial thoughts, and then I know we're getting like close to time, so we'll like wrap up. But the three big words that come to my mind are awareness, validation, and empathy, because in those moments, like, we have to be aware of our own biases or our own emotions or our own expectations that we have for other people or for ourselves. And so when you're trying to have these conversations and you're noticing like you're pushing a little bit more, or you're getting really frustrated because the other person isn't receiving you in the way that you expected them to, having that level of awareness of like, what's going on with me that I'm feeling like I'm working really hard to get this person to like listen, or what's going on. So that's like part one. Part two is like the validation piece, is because we do live in such a dichotomy right now. And so we have to be able to like acknowledge the other person's like viewpoint or perspective or emotions and like what they're going through. and that kind of goes back to like the own awareness piece too, is like, okay, so you're aware of like what's going on for you. You can also have the ability to acknowledge like, this is what the other person's experience is, and that may be different than mine, or their expectation of where they want to go may be different than mine, and that's okay. And then the final piece is just like that empathy, because we live in a world, I think, that offers more sympathy and not empathy. And there is a huge difference between the two of those things. Sympathy is more like you're trying to silver line, kind of like the toxic positivity thing, like, oh, well, the best, this is from like a video, so it's kind of an extreme example, but let's say that you have one child but you want to get pregnant again, and you've had multiple miscarriages, and so, you're trying to like communicate that to somebody, and your friend is like, well, at least you already have a kid. That is more sympathy. That's a sympathetic statement. That's not an empathetic of, yes, you're experiencing this loss, and this is something that you are really working hard for. And I can't imagine the grief that you feel every time that, you have an unsuccessful pregnancy. There's a complete difference in like the way that you're trying to communicate that. So I don't think we have enough empathy for other people in the world, because empathy requires us to tap into our own emotions and connect to the other person in that way. I may not have gone through the same experience as you, but I probably felt the same feelings, and I can connect to that part of myself in order to see and to hear you, but we don't.
I think another thing too, a non-therapist thing that how I see it is, because I've experienced recently kind of like Devyn, where you're like, it's like you see someone, you really care about them, their worth, and you want to see them shine, like you said, and you're like, it's this easy, like this is just what you have to do to shine, but like when you're in it, it doesn't seem that easy. And so like for me, because I'm guilty of doing that, like I see people I care about, and it's like, I see you struggling and I know what you're capable of. Why aren't you just doing it? Like, you just have to do A, B, and C. Like, what's so difficult? But what I'm being reminded, and what I remind myself, is we all have our own journey, like my journey and the way that I got to I'm not at my destination, but each mini vacation destination is going to be different than how you get to your vacation, like, and as frustrating as it may be for me to see you do that, I have to step back and give you that freedom to experience your journey the way that you're intended to do it, because maybe my journey is not leaving my bedroom for 6 months because I'm so upset about this situation. But like to you, Devyn, that'd be wild. You'd probably be like, get your butt up out of bed and go live life. And that just wouldn't be my journey, and it's so hard because like you said, like when you see someone you care about and how amazing they are, it's like, come on, like show the world your amazingness. But it's, trust me,
I struggled. Yeah. And I guess that's where I struggle, because it's like, I've had these moments where I think that when you have like these moments where you're like, death is so real, like that was like so frustrating to me. I'm like, why can't people understand that? Like, can't they see that they could die tomorrow? And like, and then are you gonna like, is that, bad day you had yesterday? Or like, maybe just people complaining a lot. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's just, people complain a lot. And it's like, I want them to feel heard and seen and have that empathy. And I probably need to have more empathy for people, like just because, but I guess I'll have to unwind that later and figure that out. But
tell your therapist about that.
Yeah. Like Shamina said. So I'm starting to think, yeah, for sure. It's definitely going to be our topic next session. But yeah, I guess I just kind of like, that it bothers me so much when people take like this life for granted. And so, but like you said, it was just making sure they feel validated and like hear them and let them go through that, like Carly said, their own journey. Because I don't know, ever since like I went through all of that, it makes me so mad when I see people complaining about the littlest things. And like my mama said, change is the only thing you can count on. So then why, I don't know, just kind of like go with the flow of things and realize you're just such a light. I really want people to know that. Like I listened to a podcast the other day, and this gentleman explained his dad was an alcoholic, and his dad went to a coffee shop. And in that moment, there was a man that had a discussion and shared his story about how he was an alcoholic with him. And that father went home and decided not to drink anymore. And he said he woke up at 3 a.m. and realized, wow, if that man had never had that conversation with my dad at a coffee shop, I wouldn't be here right now helping millions and millions of people. Like, I wouldn't be able to help them because of that one little moment right there. And so all these things that people don't feel qualified about, or you were in your room and you locked yourself up for 6 months, like that still doesn't take your worth away. Like that you still make a difference in this world, and like realizing that too, like you're here to help people. And it's just like, and you changing that one little habit can make the world of a difference. You could be helping a million people just because you decided to either share your story or whatever makes you feel not, qualified to do something. You hiding in your room for 6 months, like that, it doesn't matter. Like that is part of your story, and to help someone else change maybe because of that.
And like, I think you saying that really brings me to like this podcast in general.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
If I didn't go through my breakup and feel so down, I don't think this podcast would be about. And me and Shamina, especially in the beginning, but even now, we'll get messages like on Instagram of like, I've listened to your first episode and like it's really nice to know that someone else feels that way. And so it's like, for me, it's validating of like being real with myself of like, I was really sad, like really sad. Like I can still remember I would have to call Shamina to shower because I couldn't be like, she would have to talk me through my shower because I was like, I can't not be alone in my thoughts because I'm so sad. And then I remember calling her one day and being like, Shamina, I don't want to feel this way. I'm just going to call my therapist to give me medication because I can't feel like this. And she was just like, it'll get better. Like you just work through it. And like, it does. But I think if I didn't share my journey of being sad and allowing myself to be sad and having days where I literally could not get out of bed, like literally what pushed me to choose myself and leave was I had a real conversation with my therapist, and I was real and more, I was honest with myself than with her, but saying it out loud of like, I can't get out of bed in the morning. And she was just like, that's not okay. Like, she was like, you're really hurting your mental health. And I was just like, I literally struggle to force myself out of bed. And that's when she was just like, I'm worried, and then that's when I was like, okay, like I have to do something. I have to make a decision. And that's when I was like, yeah, I have to change. And like, I really think that like your mom telling you change is the only thing you can, expect or whatever it was is kind of a blessing because people aren't told that, and so there are people who, like you said, your friends lived in the same house for 40 years. They had that stability. So change is hard, but for you, it's like another Tuesday and you're, and other people it's just like, I have to move, like this is like my whole world is breaking because I've been in this house for 20 years.
Yeah, it's definitely a mind F for sure. Because on one hand, I'm still a human who wants, like Shamina said, a creature of habit. And so I have like, but also it's like, it's almost go time for me where I'm just like, okay, I know what to do. It's time to go. And then people envy that, but I'm just like, does everyone know that I'm like self-doubting myself like crazy. So it's been, it's a back and forth battle of just like being grateful for it, but then also, accepting it for what it is and mourning the loss of an old thing maybe, and then, but allowing that new thing to come to life as well.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling very emotionally full. I was not anticipating the level of emotion I would feel during today's session. I've already worked and I think I am tapped out for today.
I feel good. I feel energized.
I do
yeah,
too.
We'll talk later, Carly. In that beach conversation.
She wrote down notes. Did you see?
I wrote down
notes. Her pen feverishly writing.
Carly doesn't go to the beach. Call her now.
She's going to the beach.
But we want to thank you, Devyn, so much for coming on and sharing this space with us and being able to contribute to the podcast in its final season.
Yes. And thank you guys so much. I love what you're doing. And just, I've laughed on your podcast. I've cried before. Like you guys just talk about topics that just people need to hear about. So I hope you guys just continue to grow, whether it's together or individually. Like you guys are just both two beautiful spirits. So thank you for asking me to come on.
Thank you for agreeing.
All right. Well, I love you both, and I will see you soon.
Love you.
Bye.
Love you. Bye, guys.
Now that she's gone. Oh,
Shut up, Carly. I'm calling you soon.
All right. So, are you guys feeling full yet?
Are you? Are you?
Are you? We only have a couple episodes left.
Yeah, 2, 3.
Yeah,
That was very fulfilling for me.
I agree. I always enjoy our time with Devyn.
Yeah. She'll always be getting on me about that beat.
So stay tuned as we wrap up here the next couple of episodes of Emotionful in our final season. Again, we are just so grateful that you guys have been along on this journey with us and hope that it has brought you something along the way, because
Love,
happiness.
Did we both say happiness?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we're still active on our social media accounts. Facebook, Emotionful Podcast, Instagram, Emotionful Pod. And I think that's our only social, but keep following us, like us, comment, DM. It's getting real. We're getting towards the end. So just, I hope we affected you some way along this journey. Good, hopefully good, but if bad, it happens.
Yes. And thank you for coming along on the ride with us, hanging there a little bit longer as we finish this season up.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.